Hi, my name is Avri Swerdfeger.
My name is Hailey Sutherland.
Today we are going to take you along the journey of 9 brave students and many others whose lives helped better schools for Blacks all over the United States. This is a triumph of how Little Rock 9 changed schools forever.
In the 1950s, before the civil rights movement of the Little Rock Nine, it was a time where African Americans were facing segregation and segregation laws. African Americans had been fighting against racial discrimination for centuries. During the 1950s, however, the struggle against racism and segregation entered the mainstream of American life. During this time, many things were restricted for African Americans. They couldn't use the same bathrooms as whites, eat at the same restaurants, or even sit in the same spots on buses. In 1954, in the Brown versus Education case, the Supreme Court declared that separate educational facilities for Black children were inherently unequal. This ruled against the Jim Crow laws. Though this was a big step in the equal rights of African Americans, there were many Southern whites that resisted the Brown ruling. They withdrew their children from public schools and enrolled them in all-white schools, and they used violence and intimidation to prevent Blacks from asserting their rights. In 1956, more than 100 Southern congressmen even signed a Southern Manifesto, declaring that they would do all they could to defend segregation. During this time, African Americans weren't getting the educations that they deserved purely because of their color. Many things contributed to this discrimination against African Americans, but the main factor was segregation, and something needed to be done about it. Brown versus Board of Education was a 1954 Supreme Court case where justices would eventually rule that racial segregation of children in public schools was unconstitutional. This would prove that the idea of separate but equal education was not actually equal at all. In 1951, a man by the name of Oliver Brown would file a class action lawsuit against the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, once his daughter, Linda Brown, wasn't able to attend Topeka's all-white elementary schools. In Brown's case, he would claim that schools for Black children were not equal at all to schools for white children. He also claimed that the segregation in schools violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which says that no state can deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Brown versus Board of Education went to the United States District Court in Kansas but would have little effect immediately, despite efforts from Brown and the NAACP. It wouldn't be until Earl Warren became Chief Justice in 1953 that things would change. By the next year, there was a unanimous decision against school segregation. On May 17, 1954, Warren said that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place, and that the plaintiffs were being deprived of the equal protection of the laws guaranteed by the 14th Amendment.
The day that the Little Rock Nine integrated into Central High School was on September 3, 1957. In 1957, the NAACP registered 9 Black students to integrate into Little Rock Central High School, and these students were Ernest Green, Elizabeth Eckford, Jefferson Thomas, Terrence Roberts, Carlotta Walls, Minnie Jean Brown, Gloria Ray, Thelma Mothershed, and Melba Patillo. Elizabeth Eckford walked into the school the next day on September 4, 1957, by herself, and was publicly humiliated and harassed by the white students of Central High School. As Eckford walked into the school on September 4th, she was then spit on by several of the white students in the school, and in her own words, "It was only then that I realized that they were burying me, that I wouldn't go to school. As I stepped out into the street, the people who had been across the street started surging forward behind me, and so I headed in the opposite direction to where there was another bus stop. Safety, to me, meant getting to that bus stop." Elizabeth stated in an interview that the chants the crowd was yelling were 2, 4, 6, 8, we don't want to integrate, 2, 4, 6, 8, we don't want to integrate, lynch her, we don't want to integrate." In a CBS Evening News interview, Melba Patillo said,
"Memories of Central High School experience are always with me. They just sort of don't go away."
Minnie Jean Brown then said after Melba,
"The world came to Little Rock to see what would happen."
She also talked about how the 9 students felt when she said,
"One of the things I think that comes up is the fear, how we felt, and how we were so shattered."
Minnie Jean Brown also went on to say how they weren't invited to the prom or to any other social events. Also, on September 4th, the Little Rock Nine tried to enter the school, and they were all turned away by the National Guard, who were called in by Governor Orville Faubus. On September 4th, 1957, President Dwight D. Eisenhower called in federal troops to escort the Little Rock Nine into Central High School. Later on in their school years, in February of 1958, Minnie Jean Brown was expelled from Central High School because of several incidents with white students. Ernest Green became the first to graduate from Central High School in 1958. In 1959, in Little Rock, Arkansas, there was a rally at the state capitol to protest the integrations of the 9 students and to continue with segregation and life as it was. In 1960, Jefferson Thomas then graduated from Central High School, and then in 1965, the parents of the Little Rock 9 students filed a lawsuit in federal district court contending that their children were not allowed to go to white schools. This, however, was only the beginning for ending the segregation from schools and soon to be everything across America. Although during this time the 9 students were harassed and basically publicly humiliated, they made a better change for the world. They started the desegregation of schools. Central High School was one of the first public schools to desegregate in America, which shortly after led to the desegregation of public schools across the United States. The Little Rock Nine was also the start of ending the idea separate but equal. During this time period, there were separate bathrooms, schools, restaurants, and many other problems. When schools started to desegregate, everything else followed after. One of those other problems was where to sit in public transportations, which led to the Montgomery bus boycott, which started when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat and was then arrested. When white people realized that black people will fight for their place in society and won't give up, the white people slowly started to accept desegregation. Even the people that harassed the Little Rock Nine in the time of their segregation to Central High School, later in life went as far as going to their house to apologize for their actions. And in today's society, both races have equal rights and treatment.